allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please call the roll.
Councillor Olson.
Here.
Councillor Fennessy. Here. Councillor Bender is excused. Councillor Sweeney. Here. Councillor McDonald is excused. Councillor Mazzolia. Here. Councillor Finsland. Here. Councillor Herrick. Here. Councillor McKenzie. Here. Councillor Nowicki. Here. And Councillor Kadat. Here. I have a quorum present.
I'll ask for consideration of the minutes of the August 20th, 2013 meeting.
Move for approval. Second.
Heard the motion and second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Do you want to move 10.1 and 2?
Let's do it after consent.
Okay. Item number 6 is a consent agenda. You did receive an amended agenda for item 6.8, the Human Resources Committee to reapprove the request to fill the contract analyst position. And under item 6.2, the Deer Committee, Planning Director Cirque is recommending recommendation number 8 be referred back to the Deer Committee for further discussion regarding archery hunting on Connors Point.
Approval of the consent agenda with those additions and corrections. Second.
Heard the motion and second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. So I would like to move under resolutions 10.1 and 10.2 to be discussed prior to number 7, business might by department heads.
Move to approve. Second.
Heard the motion and second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Item 10.1 is a resolution of the City of Superior referring the amendment to the proposed project plans for tax incremental district number 11 of Blaine Central and for tax increment district number 7 Interstate Business Park to the Plan Commission for consideration after a public hearing and appointing a city representative to the Joint Review Committee.
What is the pleasure?
Motion to approve. I'll second.
Motion and second. Discussion. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Item 10.2 is a resolution providing for the issuance, sale, and delivery of $4,497,754 taxable note anticipation note of 2013 of the City of Superior, establishing the terms and conditions, directing the execution and delivery, creating a debt service account, and awarding the sale.
Move for approval. Second.
You've heard the motion and second. Discussion. All in favor signify by saying aye. Councillor McKenzie. Oh, Councillor Herrick, I'm sorry.
This guy.
Yeah, Gene, would you mind explaining why we have to do this?
I would be happy to.
Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. We are required by the DNR to be able to prove on any day that we have enough funds set aside for closure of our landfill and for 40 years of long-term care. And so at the end of our audit for 2012, our auditors asked us to request that the calculation of this be updated because it had been since 2010 when it was last updated. And so we had, working with the DNR, they are the ones that come up with what the numbers are for our liability, and they base that on any changes since 2010. For example, if we have built more landfill cells, which we have, and if we've capped any of the older cells, which we have, those will change the liability, either increase or decrease it. And I think the environmental considerations for the long-term care, actually I don't think, I know they've gotten more stringent, and so the estimates that we previously had back in 2010 were that the two liabilities, capping and long-term care, came to just around $5 million. But the more recent estimate was just over $7 million. And there's a number of ways that we can satisfy the DNR's requirements to have those funds either set aside in cash and invested, or another option is to do what's similar to a letter of credit. And that's what this note anticipation note is. This isn't debt that we're drawing on, but it's a note with National Bank of Commerce that if the DNR in the very unlikely scenario came in and said, you need to close this landfill now and we want to make sure you've got all your funds, then they're the ones that would be able to authorize that note be drawn on. And just one other comment, Councilor Herrick, you had a lot of good questions today, and it references a 4.75% interest rate, but that's only if we were to draw on that note, and so we're not planning on drawing on that note.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any further discussion? If not, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? If it pleases the council, and if you don't mind, we'll continue with the resolutions and with 10.3, 10.4.
Okay. Item 10.3 is the resolution introduced by the Community Development Division to set a public hearing for October 15th at 6:30 in room 201 for the 2014 Community Development Block Grant Action Plan.
Second?
Heard the motion and second. Discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Item 10.4 is a resolution introduced by the Public Works Committee to change the name of a street from Texas Road to Texas Avenue.
Heard a motion and second to approve. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Item 7.1, Parks and Recreation Administrator Morgan and the members of the Superior Tree Board are presenting a PowerPoint and overview and the next steps regarding the EAB infestation.
Thank you, Mary.
Thank you, Mayor. Terry, does this move? Or can you folks hear me from this far, from this? Okay, good. Thank you, Mayor and Council, for giving us some time this evening. I'm joined this evening by three people in the second row there. Mary Kehoe, the Chair of the Superior Tree Board, and Vivian Markley, the Vice Chair of the Superior Tree Board, and Gary Foy, who is a former member of the Tree Board. And you who work with citizen committees understand that these are people who volunteer their time to come to City Hall periodically and give the forester and the park department advice on our Urban Forestry Council. And all three of them have had training on emerald ash borer. Again, they have donated their time to be trained on this problem so that they can help myself and Mr. Janigo and Mr. Getzman hopefully bring to you the best possible information. So some of you are familiar with this pest and others of you have never heard about it. So I'm just going to walk you through an introduction. This beetle arrived from China, likely in wood packing material, and the approximate native range is Russia, Japan, northern China. So it is an invasive species. It was discovered in Detroit in June of 2002. Since then, it has spread north to our Canadian friends and more than a dozen states. It was identified in Wisconsin in 2008, and we confirmed a find of the bug in the north end of Superior on August 7th. All the little red dots you see on the map of the Midwest and upper Midwest there are sites where EAB has been confirmed. It ate its way through 20 million of Michigan's trees and then moved on to Illinois, Ohio, Indiana, Wisconsin, and Minnesota, and so on. With the confirmed find of EAB, we find ourselves in a quarantine That involves ash, ash residue, ash branches, ash wood, and hardwood firewood. It is believed that the way this bug travels to its next location is through human transport, and most likely firewood that's being moved here to there and everywhere. So people are not allowed to move firewood out of the county, nor are they allowed to move ash wood. This is what the bug looks like, although it is very small. If you look, it's smaller than a penny in width. If you look at that upper right picture, its larvae are white, and then the bugs come out of the trees and they mate and they do a lot of damage. The life cycle begins with mating and the laying of eggs in the summertime, and the bugs lay their eggs in bark crevices, and the eggs hatch in about 10 days. Then the eggs develop into larvae, and they tunnel under the bark to feed and grow throughout the fall, and this is the activity that actually kills the tree. And then the larvae turn back into bugs. They are dormant during the winter and emerge from the trees in May as adults, leaving a unique D-shaped hole, which is what my crews identified on an ash tree in the north end. So the trees that are at risk are all types of true ash, not including mountain ash, which is not a true ash, including green ash, white ash, and black ash. And you'll notice these leaves look similar, but they all have some small differences, so I think people in our community are having a heck of a time trying to identify whether the tree in their backyard or front yard or on their boulevard is an ash. They can go to our website for that information. And they might note that the bark is tight with a distinct pattern of elongated diamond-shaped ridges. If the tree is young, it might be smooth and gray like this. So there's a big difference between young bark and old bark. The branches and buds are directly across from each other, not staggered. And the leaves are compound, composed of 11 to 5 leaflets. The seeds, when present, are dry and paddle-shaped. So the impact of the larvae feeding just under the bark is that it disrupts the flow of water and nutrients into the tree. These pests attack both vigorous and stressed ash trees, and typically the death of the tree begins at the top and spreads downward. The potential for spreading is adult flight. They fly about half a mile a year, which is a pretty small length, but there are some among them that can fly 5 to 6 miles. And then, of course, they often are transported with human help. Let's put it that way. The movement of firewood I mentioned earlier. Nursery stock, one of the finds in southern Wisconsin came in on an ash tree that was being planted in somebody's yard. And then the matter of wood products, ash products. So the signs and symptoms of the problem are canopy dieback, suckers that grow up from either the base of the tree or mid-tree, woodpecker activity, the splitting of bark, and these S-shaped larval galleries underneath the bark, and very small 1/8 inch D-shaped exit holes. I'm just going to show you some pictures of this. The first tree is in year 1, looks healthy. Year 2, we have moderate thinning of the tree, and in year 3 to 4, we have heavy thinning and likely death. This epicormic branching or suckers can appear at the base of the tree, can appear at mid-tree, can engulf the middle of the tree. These photographs are of trees in the north end of Superior. We took these trees down because they were so very infested. You might see woodpecker damage in your ash or signs of woodpeckers, which is a little uncommon in urban areas. Vertical bark cracking, as we mentioned, S-shaped larval galleries. Both of these photographs were taken of ash trees in your community, as were both of these. We found perfect D-shaped exit holes in more than one tree, again in the north end. But I will tell you that my crews are moving through the neighborhoods and looking for signs and symptoms of ash trees in trouble. And we have found a few other hot spots at 19th and Ogden, 17th and John, Catlin Avenue, and North 21st Street. So this is the north end, the very place where we found the bug prior to the removal of these ash trees, but you can see that they're thinning and that the canopy has been impacted already. These photos are from the University of Wisconsin Extension showing dieback and decline of ash in both large ash and small ash. Gives you an idea what this looks like. So let's talk a little bit about what the value these trees give to our community. An average ash street tree in good condition with a 12-inch diameter is valued at $1,470 that it gives back to the urban landscape every year, not once, but every year. Those benefits are made up of the tree removing 1,000 pounds of CO2, 4.3 pounds of pollutants, and pay attention to this, taking up 5,380 gallons of rainwater every year. In addition, trees save homeowners up to 20% on annual utilities, both heating their homes with wind buffers and shading their homes in the summertime. And this value doesn't even include the beauty that trees offer us or the fact that we know that trees improve property values anywhere from 7 to 20%. So the thing that struck me about this piece of information is the matter of the rainwater. And when I thought about the floods that we have suffered in 2012 and 2013, I would be very sad to lose all that transpiration that our trees are, the work that the trees are doing for us. Now I have to tell you, this $1,470 isn't in a cash drawer anywhere in Gene's accounting system. It is a value that is not cash. So what's at stake in our community? In 2009, we conducted a tree survey and learned that we have approximately 3,000 ash trees in streets, parks, and at the Nemadji Golf Course. This doesn't include the Superior Municipal Forest, where we know we have thousands of ash, and it also doesn't include private ash that are positioned on the properties of residential homeowners. So just the public urban trees are about 1,800 of them are 12-inch diameter or less, and about 1,200 of them are 12 to 24-inch diameter. And so using the estimated value I just spoke to you about, it turns out that our 3,000 ash are bringing almost $4 million in value to our community each and every year that they are in good condition and out in the landscape doing their job. I just received this yesterday morning from the Wisconsin DNR. It's designed to show you that the ash have their mortality rate ramps up pretty quickly after you find them. So for example, they positioned us about right here, that the ash we found have likely been in the trees we're seeing it 3 to 4 years. We're going to see a steep mortality in the next few years that might be difficult for us to keep up with. This is an aerial photo of Newburgh, Wisconsin, which was the first infestation in Wisconsin in 2008. What you're looking at here is a rather large ash stand, completely dead. It is now 2013, 5 years later. All of these great trees are ash. They're all dead. So I want you to know that the numbers I'm using to treat is a number developed by a PhD from the University of Wisconsin Stevens Point by the name of Dr. Hauer, Rich Hauer. And Dr. Hauer has agreed to a conference call with Jeff and Todd and I on Friday morning. We'll be visiting with him in person. But this number is based on a $10 per diameter inch figure. And so if we wanted to treat our smaller trees, it would be a bill of $108,000, and if we wanted to treat our large trees, it would be a bill of $216,000. Now, the treatments available to us, at this point in time, the research shows that they must be repeated. Every 2 years, you might hear every 3 years, you might hear every 4 years. The common wisdom is every 2 years. The labels of one of the products says every 2 years. But a community might not choose to treat every single tree. You might want us to develop criteria for you that perhaps we want to choose large trees with good form, in excellent condition, with broad canopy. You might not want to treat the trees that are small, 8 inches or less, because they don't bring back that big value to the urban landscape. But the point is, you can't, well, what you're doing is you're sort of buying that tree's life for 2 years at a time. So we could treat the trees and we could review them to see if we wanted to treat them again or if we wanted to retreat a smaller number, and so on and so forth. Just wanted to bring you the City of Milwaukee's experience, having spoken with one of their staff last week. They have 28,000 ash in Milwaukee, and 14,000 of them, they began treatment in 2009 when their friends in Chicago had a confirmed find of the emerald ash borer. So they divided their city in half, north and south, and treated 14,000 trees, rotating from the north to the south. So in 9 and 10, they treated all 28,000, rotating, and then in 11, they treated the 14,000 again in the north, and in 12, they treated the 14,000 in the south. And in 2013, now they're on their 5th rotation. They are treating trees 8-inch diameter or larger in good condition. And what they told me is, to date, they have not had an ash tree that they treated show signs of EAB. They have, however, had private residential trees become infested, and some of them right next to these, near to or adjacent to the public trees. So in the 5 years since they've been rotating this treatment, they believe that treating the public ash have helped suppress infestation of the private ash. You might notice that the number there of $35 a tree is a very attractive price. The City of Milwaukee has a dedicated forestry staff. They hire 30 seasonals they then certify in pesticide application every season, and those 30 seasonals administer a product called Triage. They do that in-house, and they buy the product in bulk because they're treating a lot of ash. I'm trying to remember, I think the number was still $1 million a year. Now you have to compare that to the $27 million it would cost to remove their 28,000 or 30,000 ash. So they are still removing some, the smaller ones, the ones in poor condition, but they're also buying 2 years of these trees' lives in order to stage the takedown more slowly. So the smaller trees they're replacing with a new species. If they had 14,000 fail or 28,000 fail all at once, it would be a public safety nightmare. And you saw that death curve, it leaps after year 4 or 5 into 6 and so on. So that is the City of Milwaukee experience. Now the City of Minneapolis has a pesticide ordinance as you do. They're opting to take trees down, not treat them with an insecticide of any kind. The City of Burnsville, Minnesota is opting to treat their trees with a less toxic, sometimes called an organic treatment. And I guess I'm not sure if it's considered an insecticide, but it was developed in Canada, where they have been using it for in the range of 6 years. I've heard numbers that you have to reapply that a little more often, perhaps every year, and I've also heard that they're applying it every 2 years. So there's really a lot of information about what to do about this problem. We have not yet sifted and sorted out all of it. We have been contacted by the same tree firm that's treating Burnsville. They want to visit with us. We've been contacted by the manufacturer's rep of the product that they're using in Milwaukee. We'll be visiting with him tomorrow. We've been contacted by the United States Forest Service. They want to come and give us some management advice. We have access to a lot of resources, luckily for us, I think because it is so unique that the bug jumped half a state into our community, unless it's all around us and we are the ones who have confirmed the find, which is another possibility. So the cost of removing our trees, I have to tell you, these numbers vary throughout the state. I believe this is an average for the entire state. Therefore, it might be a little high for our community, especially on the removal. Replacing with a new species, if we contract that out, that is in the ballpark at $400 each, because I just had Massini replace a tree that a motorist took out on Hammond Avenue. So we're looking at $1 million to remove the 3,000 ash if we contracted that out, and we're looking at $1.2 million to replace them if we contracted it out. Of course, our crews can be helpful to us for a portion of the work, which will save you money. So you're sort of seeing a worst-case scenario in this slide. So I think I wanted to give you a sample of what you might expect from your staff in terms of bringing you multiple options. Although, as I said, we have not yet sifted through all the expertise that's being thrown at us. So, for example, we could, next year, remove the small ash, all of them, treat the large ash, all of them, remembering that you have to do that every 2 years, and then replace the small ash. We could do any one of these or all of these. They all have a price tag. Or, to get a little more complicated, we could, over the next 3 years, we could remove 1/3 of the small ash, treat half of the large ash in 2014 for a total of about $300K. The next year, we could remove another 1/3 of the small ash, treat the other half of the large ash, and replace the first third of the small ash in 2015 at about $500,000. Moving on to 2016, we would return to the first half of the large ash, treating it. Again, we have to treat it every 2 years, and then replacing a second third of the small ash for another price tag of $348K. I just want to show you these so that you know you don't only have one option. You're likely to have more than one option if they make sense to you. They may not all make sense to you. I can't answer definitively that the treatment is going to save the tree for its whole life. The reason I can't is that we don't know. I also can't answer definitively if there's ever a moment we can stop treating the tree every 2 years. If you opt to treat, you're going to be buying that tree's life 2 years at a time and then rebuying it and then rebuying it. The reason I can't answer if we can ever stop treating is we don't know. We don't know yet. The research isn't definitively telling us that yet. I know this is a lot to take in, so bear with me. These are trees in St. Paul, ash trees. We have identified a staging site for the wood waste and wood disposal in North End. We've been bringing chipped wood there. One or more is likely to be added throughout the city. We will be unable to take down the estimated 9,000 to 12,000 additional private trees, 9 to 12. We will have our hands full with the 3,000 that you will manage. But we hope to be able to take and process both public and private ash upcoming. And we're, Mr. Kravinchuk, who happens to be on vacation this week, is working very hard to talk with some logging firms and some wood waste disposal firms. And we're hoping to bring you some information on that a little bit later this fall after we form a solid plan. So, in terms of public awareness, we have had the benefit of our tree board, who has given presentations on this matter to yourselves at an earlier date and to various other groups. We will continue to do that. We've spoken to the county board a few years ago. In '09, we delivered 2,500 door hangers in our most congested ash neighborhood. It would be Mr. Bender's district. And later, we had Boy Scouts who canvassed Billings Park, and they delivered another 500 door hangers. So I think we bought about 7,000 of those. So we've gotten out about 3,000 of them, with more to come. I'm sure our crews will be placing these in the neighborhoods where they're taking troubled trees. Immediately after our August 9 press conference, we reinvented our website, linking homeowners and others to all sorts of really good information. And then the tree board has agreed to host with me some informational meetings for the public at the library so that we can tell this story, tell what we know, and give the best information we have in the moment. These are some ash that were removed in Michigan. And there's a ton of information on this if you want to do your own research, or if you want to guide homeowners. www.emeraldashborer.info has information for homeowners, for professionals, for loggers, and for municipalities like us. The instructions that I've given my crew, we are removing troubled ash, and by troubled ash, we mean ash trees that have lost 50% of their canopy or more are not worth treating. We have learned from the experts. We are taking some of the smaller ash, the 8-inch ash, if they happen to be in an area where we have even more troubled ash. We're taking the ash that are leaning into roadways or leaning toward homes, and we're taking some that show that cracked bark because we're afraid that those will completely crack as the borer does its job. We're leaving all of the healthy ash because we think you have some decisions to make, hopefully in a month's time, when we can bring you some good information. And that might even be too ambitious for a time frame, because this is really a lot of information to absorb, and a lot of science to absorb, and a lot of economics to absorb. So we're placing door knockers in the neighborhoods. I have to tell you, when the crew is on the street taking these trees, they're actually seeing the beetle in flight. And they've shown it to some of the citizens. We have people coming out to ask what's going on, and the crew has been actually showing evidence of the bug and or the larvae to citizens. And while they are sad, to date at least, they seem to be understanding what we're faced with. And so with that, I would try to answer some of your questions.
Mary, I've heard about the treatment that you referred to.
Yes.
What is that process? Are you spraying the entire tree, or how long does it take, that process, to work on one tree?
That's an excellent question, Counselor. If I understand it correctly, in the case of triage and perhaps the others, well, we're going to learn exactly about the process tomorrow morning. But my understanding is that there's a couple of ways it can be introduced to the tree. One way is that the tree, some small holes are drilled around the tree, and it is injected into the tree, and then a plug is placed so that it doesn't escape. Another way is the soil is drenched under the tree, and then the roots take up the product. I don't think in our community with the pesticide ordinance we can recommend that in the public rights of way. So that's my understanding about, at least to date, as to how these applications are made. Although we do have a tree care specialist in the room who might be willing. Do you want to tell them? You were correct. Okay, good. All right. I'm doing good so far.
And the
A C plus so far.
And then the bug itself. We've heard it's coming. It's here it comes. We just didn't know when, but now they're here. Are they here to stay? I mean, is there any way of using pesticides to actually get rid of them the way that they do other bugs, or how long are they going to stay? Are they going to be here forever?
they're going to eat their way through our community in the next 4 to 6 years with the ash if we leave the trees untreated, if we do nothing. If we treat the trees, we're buying that tree's life 2 years at a time. But you saw New Ulm.
Yeah.
Yeah, the death of that ash was a 5-year deal. They're not going away. The problem is not going away, if that was your question.
Well, I'm just wondering, there's no way of targeting the bug itself rather than treating trees?
Not to my knowledge, Counselor. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Counselor Olson.
Mary, seeing the city of Superior is in Douglas County, where is the county at with all this? Are we getting any help from them?
Well, the county is partnered with us, Counselor, on the day of our press conference, and the county is managing a traditional forest for logging and the sale of its wood. Their problem is a very different problem than ours. Their 260 or 70,000 acre forest has approximately 23,000 acres of ash in it. They are hosting a public meeting on September 9th to deal with the logging industry and to bring loggers up to speed on what they need to do in order to move beyond that quarantine of the county. There's some possibilities that we could be helpful to each other. I think they are likely to know some of the firms that we might interface with on the back end of the problem, which is the wood disposal. And we have pledged to be helpful to each other. We're managing an urban forest where these trees, if they die, can become a public hazard, a health hazard, and fall on people and fall on sidewalks and streets and so on. They're managing a traditional forest for logging and the sale of wood and the transport of wood, which is it's a slightly different matter. I mean, are they going to help us remove and dispose of our trees? It's likely that we'll have to handle that ourselves, but there could be some ways we help each other. It could be on the disposal end. I'm just not sure at this time.
Yes, sir.
I got a question. When you take these trees down and the city workers are saying these bugs are spreading in front of it, is there anything that we can spray on these trees before we take them down and then take them down in a couple of days where they're not going to spread and a pesticide that's not going to hurt the community or the public?
Not to my knowledge, sir. Did you all hear that question? Can we spray the trees as we're seeing the pest? It's very similar to your question. Not to my knowledge.
Even as we're taking them down, we don't have nothing to spray onto them to stop them from jumping?
No, we don't.
Can we get it?
Not to my knowledge.
Any further questions? If not, if I may, Mary, I'd like the council to consider referring this to either the Public Works Committee or Committee of the Whole with the information that Mary has. Am I correct in remembering that the crews are not taking down trees except for those that are clearly identifiable with canopies dying and some other issues?
Yes, yeah, we established a criteria of 50% of the canopy has died back, or we're seeing the other symptoms, the bark splitting, and we are taking some smaller trees in the hot spots.
Right. And the reason that Mary has directed that to happen the way it is to allow the council sufficient time to deliberate what type of solution they would want to embrace. So what I'd recommend is a referral, and with Director Getzman, Assistant Director Janico, Mary, and Finance Director Vito possibly coming back with some estimates of not so much what it's going to cost, but how do we approach it financially.
Mayor, if I could suggest that, your first meeting in October, and then perhaps later in October we can discuss the back end of the problem, which is the wood disposal and what we're going to do with that.
Would it be better to cut these trees down later on in the year when the larvae is dormant, instead of doing it now when it's warm and they're still active? Does that make sense?
I think if they're active, they've impacted the tree, and the ones we're taking, we see the impact. So essentially, I'm feeling a modest sense of urgency about trying to stay ahead of it a little bit so that we don't wind up with 1,000 dead trees on the streets. So I don't think it's going to impact the bug counselor if we take them now or take it later. It's not going to, we're not going to help ourselves if we take infested trees later.
Counselor Olson.
How do you want your motion? I mean, to refer it to Public Works? Or what do you, Committee of the Holes are typically the second meeting of the month. So where do you guys want to go? I think we definitely need to talk about it more.
I won't be available the second meeting in September, myself.
Okay.
You have a tree board if you wanted citizen input. You have a Public Works Committee if you wanted to discuss the operational approach. And you have a Committee of the Whole that we would report back to.
The only reason I suggested the Committee of the Whole, it's in the evening, it's a separate meeting, if you will, and it's probably more available to the public to come and discuss that with the council.
So do you just want this item referred to the Committee of the Whole in the second week of October, or the second meeting in October? Got that, Terry?
Councilor Finsland?
On this agendized item we have now, its suggestion is that on October 1st, we would have at the regular council meeting agendized to take the ash trees or treat the ash trees, or the multiple options. And that's already suggested in the literature that we have. I think October 1st is an appropriate time to have another presentation from people that have had the time to digest this material. And
That's great.
I think that's, they already suggested here, so I think we should look at it that way. I don't know that we need to make a motion to the referral to another committee since we're going to have a presentation anyway. Yeah, the agenda item says no action required.
Clerk says there's no action required. It will be scheduled for October 1st meeting in October. Okay. Thank you very much. Counselor? Thank you. Thank you, Mary.
Item 7.2, Parks and Recreation Administrator Morgan is requesting approval of an additional $31,290.72 for the play equipment projects at Wade Bowl and North 18th and Oaks Avenue.
What is the pleasure? You want to address that, Mary?
Sure. Let me begin by apologizing, Counselor. I made a simple math error when you first approved this project, and it was about a $30,000 error to add poured-in-place resilient matting at both sites. As it turns out, the budget number for the play equipment itself was approximately $45,000 per set, and our bid came in the range of $31,000 for each set. So, mercifully, that it's a bad time of year for some bids, but it's a good time of year for other bids, namely play equipment that would be manufactured into the fall. So, I made an error. It's $30K more, and it is allocated in the CDBG budgets that you approved earlier.
Councilor Harry?
No, I had talked to Mary about this, and what she explained to me, too, just to add to what she just said, is that the project would have came $31,000 less if it wasn't for, in other words, we would have had a surplus of what was actually budgeted for this project. Is that correct?
Yes, yes, and we likely would have spent it on other amenities on site. Yeah.
Sure. Okay.
What is the pleasure?
So, second.
Heard the motion and second to approve. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried.
Assistant Public Works Director Janico is requesting to enter into a lease agreement with Fabco Equipment, Inc. of Superior for Caterpillar 826H landfill compactor for $619,870.
For the motion, a second to approve. Counselor McKenzie.
Yeah, I just wanted to point out to Jeff and Todd, or so everybody else knows, that I know that this is a crucial piece of equipment out at that landfill, and so something had to be done there. I know there was talk about buying it outright, and with this lease agreement, it's going to be a money saver. Is that right? And could you, or maybe elaborate a little bit? Is that going to save money by leasing it?
Well, and the finance rate on the lease is 2.75%. So whatever the bonding would be, it would be one versus the other. So I think it would be a wash that way. The lease gives us the ability to get out of the purchase of the piece of equipment after year 1 or year 2 or year 3, not knowing the future of our landfill. So as far as I guess a cost savings in the situation that we end up selling or doing something different with the landfill where we're sitting on a brand new piece of equipment, it would be a cost saver there.
Yeah.
At the end of the first year, our trade-in is the first year's payments. So we would be out of it at the end of year 1 with no cost.
And so there are options. The buying it outright, there's one option, and this one there's 2 or 3.
Right.
and
There's
they're
a couple
positive.
different lease options and
Yeah,
stuff,
yeah.
and I've talked to Gene about that already. So.
Okay, thanks.
Counselor Herrick.
Yeah, Todd, just one question. Then if we still lease it in year 2, and then maybe year 4 we decide to purchase it, will everything we leased, will that amount that we leased, paid for the lease, will that go toward credit for the machine?
Exactly. It's a I don't know the accounting term for it, but it's a fully depreciated lease. So at the end of the lease agreement, the depreciated value of the piece of equipment is 0. So we're basically paying for it monthly or annually rather than one payment up front.
All right, thanks.
Counselor Sweeney.
Do we do a lease purchase analysis with equipment like this so we can look at, somebody look at and see, I know you're telling me it's cheaper to lease it, but I don't know that. Not that I don't believe you, but I like to look at numbers sometimes. So do you do a lease purchase analysis? And in the future, could you just give us that information?
Certainly can. I think the overriding factor in this particular situation is the uncertainty coming up and having the ability to get rid of it. Again, do you have a finance rate or?
We've been able to issue debt at pretty low interest rates, sometimes as low as 2%, 2.25%, 2.5%. I think in this situation, as Todd mentioned, really the benefit that we're getting here is that we're not spending right now $600,000 on a piece of equipment, but we're kind of buying some time that if we don't need this piece of equipment in a year, we can have more flexibility of what we do with it.
But I guess from what you were saying, yeah, most certainly we can bring that, if we're looking at a lease option, a lease purchase, or on every piece of equipment, look at both sides of that.
I don't say every piece, but over a threshold, certainly. Yeah.
Certainly can.
Any further discussion? There's a motion on the floor. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried.
Item 7.4, Assistant Public Works Director Janico is requesting to direct to purchase the Highway 2 traffic control equipment in the amount of $74,836.94.
What is the pleasure?
Move for approval. Second.
Motion and second to approve. Discussion. Counselor Olson.
Todd, is that's getting tacked onto the $641,000 then for the street project, so we're looking at over $700,000 for
Correct.
three blocks.
We'll have one more, and that'll be one we're trying to figure out how to purchase them, but the streetlights that will match what's on East Fifth Street in that downtown area, wrap around and have those on 22nd, and I believe there's 4 luminaires at the corner of 22nd and East 2nd that also have to go up, and that's a 20, depending on how we do, a $25,000 bill. But that'll be, this is just the mast arms, the actual lights, the signal cabinet, the controller, all of those types of signal equipment. And the state does a state bid for those annually, and that's what the state is using. That's what we used at 18th Avenue East, these same things. So it'd be just like purchasing off of Wisconsin state bid.
Was there any funding available from the Fed, seeing as 2 is a U.S. highway?
Not even a little.
Not even a little. Okay. Thank you.
We did go down that road. I guess I should explain that a little better so it doesn't sound so harsh. They allowed us to do a few things in that project that maybe they wouldn't, are kind of borderline as far as cost saving measures. Rather than there was a longer turn lane at 22nd. There were medians. There were a lot of improvements that they would require to have the signal at 22nd that we, I guess, for lack of a better term, talked them out of. So there were some cost savings there. But since it's a state highway, it's also a connecting highway. So it's a city street first, and then the state signs it as a connecting highway. So we receive connecting highway aids annually for maintenance of those streets, and that kind of, their argument is, well, we pay connecting highway aids to take care of those. And then when they're up for reconstruction, such as Tower Avenue or Belknap, that's where we see the benefit.
Any further discussion? If not, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried.
Item 7.5, Public Works Director Getzman is recommending to award the base bid portion of the force main replacement and lift station evaluation contract to SEH at a cost of $29,200, and further recommends to conditionally award allowance items of 1 and 2 at a cost of $20,000 and $21,500 respectively.
What is it, Counselor Sweeney?
The value of multiple bids comes through pretty clear on this one. You get more than one bidder, you get some great variation.
Absolutely. Yep.
Thank you.
What is the pleasure?
Move for approval.
Motion second to approve. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Item 8.1, Mayor Hagan is requesting approval to renew a consultant services agreement with Jim Caesar, JJC Business Development Consulting, for 2 years. The contract fee will remain the same at $3,000 per month.
Further motion second to approve. Discussion. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Any further business to come before this body? I'm sorry.
Is there someone in the public that wants to speak? Okay. He wasn't signed up. Come on up to the microphone, please. Would you turn the light on the microphone?
Hello, everyone. My name is George Tergoski. I live down in Billings Park, and we have a little problem down there with the train horns. I'm sure you're all aware of it, but they're very, very loud, and they're really disturbing a lot of individuals that are down in that area. I mean, there's some people that are sleeping down in their basements because the horn is so loud. What is the plan to take care of this situation? What is the remedy?
Yeah.
I've also had a phone call into Todd over here, left my name with him, but no response back.
I left you a message, and I
Yeah.
got back to you after hours yet.
I'll,
You know, one of the things that they could do is probably keep the PSI, the pressure on the horns, at a lower pressure so it wouldn't be so loud. Some of the noise is traveling as far out as Hill Avenue on the other end. So it's affecting a lot of the citizens in Superior. Not only me,
Right.
but everybody.
I'll try to give you a brief understanding, and then Todd has been handling this point person for us. The city has been into a quiet zone exception for a long time, and the city has not provided the corrective measures over a period, a long number of years. We applied for an extension of that. We were denied. Burlington Northern BNSF also wrote a letter opposing the extension, which saddened us, if you will. We've been working with the Federal Railroad Administration on solutions, but also seeking extensions, which, to the best of my understanding, we're not going to get. So the next measure is a bunch of options that the council may wish to consider, and I'll let Todd tell you what those may be. One is very expensive.
We basically have two options there. One of them is we sign an agreement. We did, when we filed the waiver for the train horns, to get the extension, we also filed a waiver for what's called constant warning timing. That would have been 7 figures and up in order to install lights and gates at that 28th Street crossing. The waiver was approved, so we don't need the constant warning timing. The recent estimate from BNSF is $460,000 to install lights and gates at that crossing. The time frame on that is about a year from the time we sign the agreement with them. The other option is close the road. Those are the only two ways to get the train horns from stopping, to stop sounding. It's all coming at a federal level, not even a state level. It's that FRA regulation that the horns have a set decibel level, a set pattern at those crossings. I've looked at it up and down and sideways and crossways and backways, and it's at a federal level. We've had, I believe we had a couple of councilors even write to congressmen, senators, trying to get some leverage that way to actually change the rule, and I don't know if there's been any fruit that way. But we're stuck with hundreds of communities throughout the United States that this is happening to. It's based on a risk assessment. There was an accident there 4 or 5 years ago. Somebody ran into the side of a train that was already in the intersection, and that creates a higher risk, so it no longer qualifies as a pre-roll quiet zone. So that accident basically took us out of the pre-roll. So our options today are sign an agreement with BNSF for $460,000 and wait the year, or close North 28th Street. They're not good options.
Well, I can see neither one are, spending money, but, I see the money being spent on trees that we're taking down here. And the amounts are a lot larger than it would be for a train sign. You got to understand that this is a working yard with many tracks that are in there, compared to some of the communities that do have the rail crossings that only have one train going by maybe one time out of the day. Where we're at is you got trains going back and forth, empty trains, just the engine going there back and forth. I mean, there's no rhyme to reason what they're doing, except probably moving cargo or something like that, or cabooses or whatever they do. But
even in the case of lights and gates at that crossing, and it's my understanding that the engineer has the ability, right, whatever the correct word is in the case of an emergency, somebody on the track, something, so it should reduce the crossing, but it won't eliminate completely. So, I mean, I'm sure there was horns there prior to June 24th, not nearly as frequently as they are now, but the occasional horn. So you'll still.
It's not occasional. Okay.
Right. The occasional before June 24th. In the case of emergency, now it's every time they go through that crossing, every engine going one way, every engine going back, the switching operations, everything. So it's 12, 14, 16 trains a day, if not more. So those are the options that we have. And
So what do you plan on implementing? That's my next question to you.
That's what we're seeking council approval or council advice for. We've talked about it at our Public Works Committee, what direction we're going to go. This is one crossing. There are, if you look at the North Third line up in North End, that's about probably a $4 million lights and gates to create a quiet zone up there. So there's an expense not only at this crossing, but how many of these are we going to do? How many are we going to look at? So those are the options that we're presenting before our committees and our councilors.
And when will the public have an answer on this?
Hopefully in the next probably month or two.
Within 30 days, you're saying?
I don't know if
Within 60 days?
Within 60 days, we should have
Within 60 days, you'll have an answer, one way or the other?
We should have an answer what's going to happen.
Okay.
One way or the other. Even with that 60 days, though, the clock on the improvements does not start until something comes through, probably this council approving an agreement with BNSF Railway for improvements at that crossing for the council to approve. Once that's signed, approved by council, then the clock starts, and then they have a year. It takes them about a year to do the improvements.
So you're telling me by the end of 2014, the problem should be solved? Within a year?
If the council approves this, yes.
Okay.
And I can't do much more than present what I have and try to get the best information to these folks so they can make the best decision possible.
So the time frame is you're going to make a decision within 60 days, and then within a year there's going to be an improvement that's done there, correct? Am I understanding you correctly?
Yes, depending on that decision in the next 60 days. I'm not saying that that's going to happen. That's up to these folks. How they want to move stuff around or whatever to make this improvement. But
because I'm sure there's a lot of neighbors of mine that would like to come down here and express their opinion too.
Understood.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councilor Herrick?
Can I throw a little light on that, on this train?
Wait a second, I just want to, I'm going to respond to something that you say there. That's okay. Yeah, Congressman Duffy's going to be in town tomorrow, and I'm hoping to bring up this issue with him. So hopefully I'll have an opportunity to do so. I've been contacting his office, and how things are. It's been kind of slow. So, but hopefully tomorrow I can talk directly with Congressman Duffy about this. So.
Councilor McKenzie.
Yeah. Thanks, George, for coming up here. There's a lot of people that echo what you're saying, including me. Big problem. I don't know what exactly what the solution is. I'm hoping that maybe the FRA, with Mike Herrick contacting congressmen and other people making some contact and emails and letters that, maybe they'll have a change of heart. I don't know, to give us some sort of an extension. But again, something has to be done because it's not just 28th Street. I mean, that's a big problem. That's one that I'm dealing with myself. But it's other crossings, and so and we're a train town, and we've got crossings everywhere. So this is something that people are concerned about all over the city. This goes back a ways even before this thing was lifted. I know Esther Dahlbeck, when she was here, before Bob had a big issue of train horns down there on the corridor in the north end, and Bob Brown had the same issue. He sat here one day, and because he had nothing to do at 4 o'clock in the morning because he couldn't sleep, he recorded all these train horns, and it was relentless. And that's what I'm going through myself at this point. If some of you people haven't experienced this, if maybe you don't believe what's going on, I have a room in my house that I'm going to be renting out for free for 2 weeks, so you can get the ultimate train horn experience. And I challenge you to sleep if you can. So, anyways, thanks for everybody that spoke. Thanks a lot, Todd, for explaining that. And I know it's a convoluted, really complicated situation right now, but really hoping something gets resolved. And I understand what George is saying. He wants to know a time because he wants to sleep, and he's losing tenants, I think, too. Thanks.
Any other business come for this body?
Excuse me, I'd like to speak on this. because I did a petition to keep Elm Street open, and I'm good friends with the railroad commissioner. I'm talking to him all the time, because I'm still trying to get the gate there on Elm on 12th there, for them to extend it. If it's a fast track, if that train is leaving town, the railroad's responsible, whoever railroad owns that track is responsible for putting a drop. If that train is leaving town at a fast rate, it's called a fast track. And I don't want you to let the railroad push anything over on us and saying, we're responsible. That's crap. If those trains are leaving town at a fast rate on 28th Street, they're responsible, not us. And I've talked to the Railroad Commission for years, because I fought to keep Elm Avenue open for the business in the corridor, for Foster, Evans, and everybody else there. I went around and got 1,200 signatures and another 750, because if the council wasn't going to keep that open, the 750 would have been to dissolve the city council. And that's how serious it was getting. And now they have got the one there, they fixed the one on Catlin, they fixed the one on Winter Street, they fixed all these, because there's a fast track there. And they had to pay for it, not us. And I think you should look into that with the railroad commissioner. Call him, don't call the railroad, call the railroad commissioner and tell him that if that train's leaving at a fast rate, they have to put in a drop.
Thank you. It's very interesting. We'll take it under consideration. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Second. Mr. Anderson. Thank you.